Welcome to Break the Mold with Anwyn. I'm here today with John James Santangelo, and has the L.A NLP training school. And could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, little, you're going to make me do this, aren't you? Okay. That's a crazy question because no matter who you ask that question, people go into our story, right? We go into our
Yes.
past. And
Yes.
it's funny because as coaches, you and I as NLP practitioners as well, it's one of the first things that we ask people, right? Tell me about yourself, tell me your story, tell me your problem.
Yes.
So if I have to go into my story, I think my story is, I believe, as we were just talking about, is like everyone else's story. We're born, we grow up, we try to figure out who we are, right? And what our purpose is. I think those are the two biggest questions in life. Who are we? And what are we designed here? What are we supposed to do here? What's our purpose? So I think that's really the crux of how we live our lives. I think once you figure out who you are, it's a lot easier to figure out your purpose rather than the reverse, trying to figure out your purpose and figure out who you are. And I'm no different than anyone else. You know, Tony Robbins has his story, Oprah Winfrey has her story, Michael Jordan has his story, the Prime Minister of Britain has his story. We all have our own stories. We all grew up the same. We all were born, whether we liked it or not, with our parents, our primary caretakers, and we try to figure out life. Mine
Mm.
was going through school. My parents didn't have the best relationship. You know, at the age 22, I think they were going through some divorce, and it really affected me. And you know, I turned to the bad side of life and drinking and drugs, and then I slapped myself after a couple of years and said, "Thank God I had a good grandfather that gave me good roots." And
Okay. So
he always said,
was that
"Be
the
your
turning
best
point?
person."
Like
Yeah, absolutely.
like
Yeah,
your grandfather
yeah.
helped you
Well,
see?
I don't think
Did
he
you?
helped me. I think his background of who he was and growing up with him, I finally, self-awareness of what am I doing? Right? Because I think
So
that's what
how
a
did
lot of
you
people
find
really
that
do.
self-awareness?
Ah,
Like, what was the moment the aha moment?
I'm going to go forward and then back. When I 20 years later, when I finally learned NLP, one of the NLP presuppositions is we do more to avoid pain than gain pleasure.
Yeah,
We try to
away
stay
from.
away from as much pain as possible.
Mm,
Even if it's a good pain, like working out, strengthening your body is a good pain, but most
yeah,
people don't want to do it. It's painful. We want to be in a relationship, but we're afraid to be in a relationship because it could be painful.
yes.
So now go back 20 years and I look at myself in that moment and say, I was probably creating so much pain for myself. I remember looking down at my hand and having literally at 20 years old, having pills in my hand. I was going to take them.
Okay.
And
Mm,
I thought, what am I doing? This is crazy. This is stupid. Everything I've learned, what I thought I learned at 20 years old, because we think we learn so much when we're young, right? We know everything as teenagers. I think that pain right there, that pain point was slapping me upside the head, going, you deserve more than this. You can do better than this. And I think that internal voice was probably my grandfather's voice saying, you're better than this. And so from then on, I really took a quest to find out who I was. And for the next 20 years, asking myself the question, I think we talked about this before, was what do I want to do with my life while I'm here? Right. I think so many people really don't delve into that. They don't ask that question. They focus so much on the pain that they're in. They just want to get out of the pain.
yeah.
And one of the things Tony Robbins says is so much of what we do in life is state management, and usually negative state management of avoiding the pain. So we avoid the pain by drinking, drugs, workaholics, sexaholic, procrastination, taking, as we talked about before, no responsibility, just alleviating everything we have to really focus on. And so much of that is really going in internal and figuring out who you are and what you value most. And for me, that was the point. And then from then on, I just asked, what would I want to do for the rest of my life? And the question I came up with, or the answer I came up with when asking that question was, I love to teach and I love to entertain. Now what? Now what
Yeah.
can I do with those two characteristics? And it came out to be, I'd love to speak to people. I'd love to help teach. So started getting all my certifications in clinical hypnotherapy, psychology, NLP, becoming, a doctorate in sociology and clinical hypnosis, and really understanding how the brain works and how the mind works and how we can use that to really affect the results that we want to produce every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you, when were you a magician? You started off.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think everybody loves magic for two reasons. One is they're enthralled by the entertainment of it, like the wow, or they're frustrated by it because they can't figure it out. Right? There's always two sides to that coin. And that was a simple magic trick my father brought home to me from Knott's Berry Farm one day, and I've just become entranced in the psychology of how it happens to the mind and the misdirection and the psychology of it. And I went in deeper into it and became a professional for the next 5 years and really learned that the psychology behind that is everything. It's not just the magic. It's not just doing the trick. It's the psychology of it. Kind of like everything else we do in life, right? A relationship, it's still an act, right? It's still a process. So is a magic trick. So is making money. It's the psychology behind it that really brings out the benefit of every one of those results. And so from there, after I dropped the profession of it, because I didn't see myself doing that for the rest of my life. And I really, when I found psychology, I was home. I felt this is where I'm supposed to be. Not just to help myself, but just to help other people as well.
Yeah, that sort of leads to one of the questions from Mary, which is, how does NLP work?
Wow. Okay.
Because, well, I mean, you mentioned
Yeah.
results. Results is one of the
Yeah.
things, isn't it?
Let me give your listeners a background. It basically came from a psychology model. Raise your hand if you're listening to this podcast and you've ever had a problem, right? Whether it be relationships, money, or health. How do we create that problem? And then the second question is, how do we solve the problem? Well, NLP is really about solving the problem. It's about the mind-body connection.
Yep.
It's the hardware. Linguistic part of it is the language, which is how we talk to ourselves and communicate with other people, because we're always talking to ourselves, whether it be negative internal dialogue or positive internal dialogue. And then the P is for the programming, which is the recipes, the mind recipes or strategies, as we call them, to produce the results. So in a basic form, NLP, Mary, is really about how do we produce results? How do we talk to ourselves with the mind-body connection to produce the results we want? And when the two gentlemen that really co-founded it understood that every successful individual that produced any result at all, we could produce the same result over and over again by really understanding how they did it. We don't need to go and reinvent the world. If you want to lose weight, don't talk to somebody that's overweight and obese.
No.
Talk to somebody that was overweight and obese and lost the weight. They have a better strategy. If you want to talk to somebody about making money, you're not going to go talk to somebody that's poor and struggling, even though they focus on it every day. Or if you want to talk about relationships and who has the best relationships, go talk to a couple that is involved in a loving, harmonious, healthy relationship. And that's what NLP is about. Find out the success strategies that they're doing and model them and replicate them over and over again. And that's really all it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good
Good
description.
question, Mary. Good question.
And oh yeah, she said, what can I achieve with NLP or hypnotherapy?
Oh,
Anything.
that's yeah, exactly. What do you want?
Yeah,
Right? Because
exactly.
here's the thing, and when this is the thing that I found. When individuals come to us and they're looking for help, most people focus on what's not working.
Yes.
And guess what you get more of? What's not working. Because the
Yes.
brain, like when I talk about this, the mind, we break everything down. Every episode that I've been on, every interview, every TV show, every podcast, everybody's talking about something up here, but the core essence is how the brain functions, how the mind produces that result. So you need to know what that result is that you
Yes.
want
Yep.
first before the mind can produce that result. And unfortunately, most individuals that are in trouble or they're seeking help are constantly going over what's not working in their head. And I'll
Mm.
give you an example. Here's one of the questions I ask. The first question I ask my coaching clients. Let's pretend I'm your travel agent. What's the first question I'm going to ask you? Where do you want to
Where
go?
do where do you want to go? Yeah.
Right? Though here's what people say. Oh, God. You know, I don't know. I don't want to go to Italy. Tuscany, I've been there before. That's just, it's old hat. Right. And I've been to Germany and I go, okay, okay. Well, where do you want to go? Oh. I love New York, but I don't want to go there. They're having too many problems right now. This is everything that's their story. They get looped through their story over and over again, and they never really decide where they want to be, where they want to go, where their
Mm.
heart feels most comfortable. And if you don't understand that, the mind, 51% of the time, whatever you focus on will produce the results, whatever you put up on the screen of your mind. So if
Yeah.
you're putting up on the screen of your mind lack, unhappiness, I've been there before, I don't want to go there, your mind, which is run, as we know, 90% of the unconscious mind
Mm.
is producing what we put up on the screen.
Yeah.
And your unconscious mind, which loves you so much, which is like a 7-year-old, which loves you so much, it's just there to serve you. It's there to serve. That's all it is. And if you ask, why aren't I happy? Why can't I lose 10 pounds? Why am I so miserable? Why don't relationships work? Why don't I have enough money? Why can't I afford this? Your unconscious mind goes, I love you. I'm going to give you those answers. And it gives you the answers that you don't want. It gives you the same answer. I'll tell you why you're unhappy. I'll tell you why you don't deserve it. I'll tell you why you're not making money. I'm telling you why you can't lose 10 pounds. And that's the unfortunate thing is we don't uncover what we want. And
Mm.
so
Yeah.
NLP is really about uncovering strategies and programs, recipes, mind recipes to discover what you want and then learning to get out of your own way, as I say.
Yeah. So true. So what does responsibility look like for you?
Oh,
As
when
we're
we
talking
talked,
about
yes,
responsibility
yes,
in
yes, yes.
relationships.
When we talked about that before, I've always had this quote in my head that Dr. Wayne Dyer, you know who Dr. Wayne Dyer is?
Yes.
It's like, oh, I grew up listening. That was one of the things that really changed the direction of my life and doing what I do. And he said this about responsibility. He called it, I love this quote. He called it responding with ability.
Yeah, nice.
It's so eloquent. It really encapsulates everything that we do because again, coming back to the brain, right, which is just a functioning machine, there's only two ways that we can deal with life. One is through reaction. It's
Yes.
like stepping on a tack, right? If you step on a tack or a nail, it's automatic. You pull your foot up. You don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
Acting, behavior. And it's so appropriate how he said it, responding, not reacting, responding with ability, responding with our natural born gifts. And one of the other presuppositions of NLP, you understand, right? We have all the resources we need to succeed within
Yes.
us. We just
Yeah.
need to look inside. And
Yeah.
so responsibility is responding with ability, not just going back in the past and pulling up something we did before and go, oh, that's the way I've done it. Oh, that's the way I always should do it then. Well, if it's not working 1,000 times in the past, why do you think it's going to work again today? Right. And that's
Yeah.
responding with ability.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's also what we learn about cause and effect, isn't it?
Right.
That,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
We blame others by, saying that you made me feel this way.
Right.
Mm.
It's one of the things we talked about before is you point the finger at other things or other people, and there's three fingers pointing back at you.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Like, oh, it's my boss. Oh, it's my wife. It's my husband. It's my spouse. My partner. It's my dog. It's my car. I'm late for work. It's the world environment. It's the wars going on. It's the hate going on in the world. You can point the finger at anything, but it all starts with us. We're the center of the universe, right? You, as a being of God, a being of the universe, as a being of whatever you think your creator is, we're the center of the universe, and we respond to that environment that we create.
Yes. Well, in your particular relationship, what's important to you?
Oh, wow. There's the question. That's the question for everything,
It is, isn't it?
right? What we talk about in NLP are values.
Yes.
What's most important to us? What's most important? So you're listening to this podcast, and let's talk about relationships for a bit, because I believe relationships are probably the crux of everything that we do, right? The relationship you have with yourself, the relationship you have with other people in your life, the relationship you have with your coworkers, in society. And if you don't value yourself and value others, how are you ever going to have a healthy, dynamic relationship? It's impossible. Someone said to me, you can't give away what you don't have inside, right? You
Yes.
understand that?
Fill your cup first.
Right. And we never, and that's a universal qualifier, we don't always look inside at what truly we value most. So let me give you a little story about relationships.
Yeah.
In the beginning of my career, when I was as a professional speaker, I was always dumbfounded by relationships and why most people don't have the relationship they want. I mean, we already know, statistically speaking, now that 55 or 60%, which is a high number, of most relationships, marriage, let's say, end up in separation or divorce. And the other 40%, probably half of that 40% are unhappy and don't want to leave the relationship. Then you have the other 20%, which are asking the question, am I happy? And I am happy. So I'd probably say maybe 10% of most people in a relationship are probably happy in the relationship. That's really sad, isn't it? It really is. It's really sad. But that aside, we choose to be in that relationship. So my question I kept asking myself is not how do I make the relationship better, or how do I get out of the relationship in a healthy way, but how do I choose the right partner? That's the question. Or of everything that everyone does, right? About relationships stem from everything about money, relationships about your health, relationships about relationships.
What were your values in your relationship? What's important to you?
Every year with my wife, we've known each other now for 8 years. Every year on the first of the year, and a shameless plug for my book, Setting Goals, is we sit down with each other the very
Yeah.
first couple of days of the new year and decide our goals for the year coming up. And we write them
Fantastic.
down. She writes hers down, I write, and we kind of meld them together and then put it up on the refrigerator so we see it every day. And so
Yes.
to me, those are our values, and they change year to year,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
vacation that we want to go on, we have a
Mm.
thing goal, right? Things that we want, things, places we want to go. We have a marriage goal, what we want to
Yeah.
do within our marriage and how we want to treat each other. And then we have personal goals, that we want to
Fantastic.
accomplish individually. And so to me, that's a huge value for me, right? Is that
Yeah.
her and I are aligned on the same page. Because I think that's,
Mm.
as you were talking about before, that's important in a relationship to be, having those same standards,
Mm.
right?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Very good. I went to
So,
California. I went to San Francisco. I haven't been to Los
uh,
Angeles.
yeah, we went to Frisco on our honeymoon. It was
Really?
awesome. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. I did the 6 day. Have you heard of, Werner Erhard?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you went to Esalen?
I went to the 6 day, yeah,
Yeah.
in the
Oh
hills in
wow.
California, yeah.
That's where NLP started.
Really?
Yep, in the hills of Esalen, right there off of Morro Bay and Santa Cruz. Yep.
So was Werner Erhard and Tony Robbins knew each other, or
Um, Werner started his practice. Um, I forget what's called LifeSpring.
right?
LifeSpring in the beginning, and then he got a lot of negative feedback from it. He ended up closing the business down, and that's right around when NLP really started formulating the processes and the strategies. Right around the time he left the business, and then I think it was about almost 5 or 8 years later that Tony Robbins came into the picture and learned from Dr. Bandler and Professor John Grinder.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and look, people, if you go to the internet and search NLP, you're going to see a lot of negative feedback from it, which is okay, that's fine.
Mm,
To,
mm,
to me, and they're just tools. The
mm,
NLP are just tools.
mm,
And Tony
mm,
Robbins literally learned those tools and took it to a completely different degree of empowerment,
mm.
right? And so
Have
you,
you done timeline therapy?
oh yeah, I was certified,
Yeah.
yeah, as a master
Yeah.
master practitioner, yeah. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's such a powerful
Because
exercise.
Tad James developed it, didn't
Yeah,
he?
yeah. I studied with Tad. I learned
Did you?
my first practitioner courses were from Tad's company. And so
Yeah, right.
I learned the basis of Tad's strategies and learned timeline therapy. Tony, I don't think, and I've done a lot of research and I've known a lot of his coaches and personally with him, I don't know if he ever learned timeline therapy. I don't
No.
I don't think they ever had a connection in their process. Now, not to say that timeline, because there's timelines, was developed 150 years ago.
Mm,
Tad formulated timelines into a therapy process, and he trademarked
mm.
the name timeline therapy, and he
Yeah.
formulated the process. Timeline's been around for a long time.
Yes. Yeah.
Past life regression, right?
Uh,
Genealogy, that's all
G
timeline stuff.
Gestalt. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, Gestalt therapy, right? And so I think Tad formulated in his book Behavior Timeline Therapy and Behavioral Therapy. A great book if you want to learn. Go to his website. He
Mm,
just passed away actually last year, I think, and his wife is running the company now. And his son is an
mm.
offshoot. Matt James is running another part of his company. So
Wow.
yeah, there's some great tradition in NLP. It's an
Yeah.
amazing process. And if you guys are listening and you're really interested, there's plenty of certification courses. I mean, another plug for me, I wrote a book on discovering NLP and really broke it down into simplistic, digestible information, because it's a complex situation, it's complex information, right? Understanding how the brain works.
Mm.
So, but if you guys are interested, if you email me, I'll send you chapters of both those books, the Setting Goals book and the Discovering NLP book. I'd love that, because again,
Mm.
what we do is to get information out. And when it changes any part of your life or your entire life for the better, we've done our job. So relationships, especially In fact, Tony Robbins was talking about one today, the relationship you have with yourself.
Yes.
Right. And the faith, he talks about faith. And I love that.
Faith in yourself and faith in your partner too.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And that's interesting that you say that. That is the result. That's a result of our choosing the right partner.
Yes.
Because your other partner, which is fine, though we got to take responsibility because we chose them. And if they're not the right person, which we've all been there, then I don't care how much faith you have in them or how much they have in you. It's the wrong person. There's the wrong energy, you know? And that's so important about choosing. And I think choosing is really understanding who you are and what value that you bring to the relationship that you want to be in. Because then, as you know this, the universe, God, whatever you say, will bring you that right person.
Mm. And with long-term relationships, this is actually something that I discussed early on in my podcast, was that I actually was in a relationship for a long time and I wasn't choosing it. And so then when I made the choice that this is the person I really want to be with, it changed things dramatically. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, we know, we talked about this before in manifesting. If you don't manifest, the universe will manifest for you and bring you something that you don't want.
Yeah.
Because the energy, which I believe are values that you desire in yourself and other people, do not align.
Yeah.
That energy
It's all about
doesn't.
alignment.
Absolutely. Right. So I reversed engineered this process. I said, okay, well, if it's a list, if it's a grocery list of who I want to have in my life and be, I started asking a bunch of people. And I'm going to give your listeners this list because I think it's really important. It's called 50 Characteristics. It's a worksheet. I started asking a bunch of people, what do you want in a relationship? And of course, everybody had different answers, right? What do you value most? What do you value in yourself that you'd like to complement with someone else? I think that trust, which I believe that trust in ourselves and other people is the core of every relationship. This while you're in a relationship as well, especially because then you'll find out really what's important to you about in that relation with the other person. You take these 50 characteristics and you circle 20 of them that are important to you. The most 20. Then you take 10 of those 20 away and write those down on a separate sheet of paper. So you have 10 characteristics that are important to you. The next thing is then prioritize those 10. What's your number one? What's your number 10? Now here's the conundrum in this. People say, well, yeah, those 10 are really important. The top 3 are your deal breakers.
Yeah.
Those are the things you can't live without. Those
Where
are the
you
things,
spend your time, your energy,
all your focus,
your money,
all
everything,
your energy, because
everything.
those are your core values.
That's right. Yeah.
Those are your core values. Now, can you make a relationship work if those 3 aren't present in the other person? Maybe. But I will bet you that there are other values that are more important. So they haven't really done their homework, right? So those values are important to me. What's important to you? So you can go get this list and you can do this exercise and you can email me. I'd love to talk to you about it because it's interesting. One of my best girlfriends said this to me. She goes, oh my God, John, humor was my number one value. I want somebody to laugh with and be happy with.
Yeah.
And I went, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And guess what? Guess what she didn't have in her marriage? Humor, happiness, and she's struggling.
I think this is a really good place to come in with another question from Jude. And
Thanks, Jude.
She says responsibility for our actions is a contract with yourself.
Yeah.
But when in a relationship, it's more complex. If you take responsibility for your own dreams and life, wishes, knowing it, if you follow that it could cause harm to others. Compromise between what you want and what you bring to the relationship demands.
Yeah.
Age, time, and disease take so much that feeling left. Well, to give you a bit of background, her partner has a disease that's quite debilitating.
Mm-hmm.
So more responsibility for the other, and then yourself. Where do your needs, responsibility outweigh the needs of your partner?
Wow. That's just, that's
Yeah.
deep.
Yeah, it is.
That's deep. Okay. I'm only going to say this simply like this. There has got to be a love for the other person greater than yourself. That's it. That's the only answer. Because if not, you're never going to stick around. You're never going to do the things that other person needs. I mean, if whatever, I mean, I don't know what the illness is, but if it, let's say it's arthritis and they can't walk and they can't get up, look at Michael J. Fox has
Yeah,
Parkinson's.
that's
And
actually
you
what he has.
right, and you watch him and he shakes. If you're
Mm,
involved in a relationship with somebody like that, you better have a love for that person greater than
mm,
yourself. And that is, to me, that's family, right? We would do anything for family.
mm.
And if you don't have that,
Well, I think she
oh,
does. And I think that the thing is that, like, where her dreams gone then
right.
in
And,
that.
and well, okay. So before, maybe, I don't know her story. Let's just say before she got into the relationship or before that person got ill, she
Mm,
had dreams
mm,
for herself and maybe both of them. Yes.
mm,
That changed. That environment changed. Those
mm,
dreams for yourself and your partner have to change as well.
mm,
You can't
mm,
go back in the past and go, your
mm.
dreams, like anything in life, have to evolve.
Yes.
And you
Mm,
and if you believe that your dreams should be in the past, that's a
mm,
selfish act. Your dreams have to change with
yes.
your environment. And
Mm,
if you
mm,
don't want to be in the relationship, get out. Get
mm,
out. I'm harsh. I tell my clients,
mm,
give me permission to tell you the truth.
mm, mhm.
That's why when I was going through psychology, I knew I couldn't sit in a room for 8 hours with someone and just listen to them complain.
Yeah.
Not to say that everybody does. Most people do. They want to hire a therapist so they can vent because here's the logical this is where NLP comes in, the mind body connection. Emotions equal emoting, and
Mm,
emoting is releasing.
mhm,
And that's where the Latin word comes from, releasing.
mm.
I believe as human doings, we need to release these negative emotions, whether they're small or large, doesn't matter. You can have a negative emotion about your neighbor. I hate that guy, or I hate that family. They're so weird. You've got to vent it out. You've got to release it. Here's one of the things Deepak Chopra says. When we hold on to these negative emotions, they well up in the body. And we talked about this before. That's energy not being released.
Mm.
You know what's a metaphor for that? A volcano. What does a volcano do? It builds up this pressure.
Erupts.
Then boom,
Mm.
all hell breaks loose. And that's what people do. They don't
Yes.
vent, they don't express themselves, they don't vent these emotions,
Mm.
and they hold them inside. And then one day somebody says something or does something that's so minuscule and so small, and it just triggers all this negative emotion. They explode.
Mm.
And I'm like, I don't know why this happens like this.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. This is crazy. You know who Dr. Phil is?
Yeah.
Oprah Winfrey made Dr. Phil famous by having
Mm.
him on his show, having
Yes.
Dr. Phil on her show week after week after week. And then pretty soon the Oprah network said, you know what, Dr. Phil, let's give you your own show.
Mm.
I think you have something important to tell. The interesting thing was he was out here in Los Angeles. He did a small little venue concert, I guess you could call it, more like a workshop. There was only a couple thousand people. I was blessed enough to go the night before he went on live television. The night before. And we're sitting in there, these couple thousand people, and he said something, and was really, really interesting. And I'm getting around to the relationship question again.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to give you context. He said to the audience, do you know what the number one precursor is to divorce? But here's what he said: resentment.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which goes back to what we were just talking about: energy, unresolved emotion. Now,
Mm-hmm.
it could be a fight that you get in over, oh, I want to go to this restaurant, and you promised me, and then we went to this. That little bit of resentment, if it's not talked about, not communicated, not vented out,
Yeah.
we hold on to that energy. And like, I love this metaphor. It's like your closet in your house where you have all your crap that you store. You take that little bit of garbage and you put it in your closet and you shut the door.
Yeah.
And then the next one comes along. They don't have to be big pieces of resentment. Eventually, you can't close the door anymore
Mm. Mm.
because now it's one giant resentment. And all
Mm.
that energy builds up. And finally, it's that one little thing that triggers you, that it explodes and the door opens and all of this comes out. And he says,
Mm.
that's what people don't do. They don't communicate. They
Mm-hmm.
don't vent the emotion that they're talking about. Because again, here's what it comes down to: trust in ourselves, that we can become vulnerable.
Yes.
Because if we're vulnerable, that means we have to risk being hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we just talked about, right? We want to do everything to avoid pain, then gain pleasure. So we avoid that. And now this is all unconscious. That
Or
90%,
you could
right?
change the narrative that when you're vulnerable, you actually have an opportunity to grow.
Of course. But here's the thing. You, like you said in the beginning, you have to take responsibility for that though first.
Yes.
But hey, here's what, and look, I'm guilty of this too. My first marriage lasted a year and a half, and I knew the day before we get married I shouldn't have done it. But it's like, oh, it's the right thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I pointed the finger at her the whole time. I chose her.
Mm.
She was the wrong person for me.
Yeah.
That's taking responsibility. That's responding with ability. Because
Mm.
once you do that, then like you said, then we can start making the changes that are necessary in leading us in the direction that we truly want to have. Look at, the number one energy in the universe is love. And we're all looking for it. We all want to feel it. We all want to talk about it. We all want to know what it's about. And when you find it, and there's some lucky few people in the world that find it,
Mm.
that's heaven here on earth.
Mm.
That's what it's about.
That last question kind of leads into the next question, because you mentioned about your dreams that have to evolve and change. And so this person says, when we marry a person, do we expect them to be how things should be? What if they're not? And will they change? And they say, I don't think so. That they do. It's how they are conditioned since birth. They might try, but will revert back to the way they were conditioned.
She answered her own. Is it a he or she that said that? You answered your own question,
Really?
really, because look, Somebody said this to me once. It's so interesting. I've been in a lot. Personally, I've been in a lot of relationships. I didn't even want to get married till I was probably 50. And then I really delved into who I am, so I could have that harmonious energy. I knew it was going to be an energy. Somebody said to me, "You expect too much." I was like, "What?" You shouldn't have expectations in a relationship. And at first I thought, oh, wow, okay. Then I got thinking about it. Well, isn't what she just said an expectation?
Mhm.
Of course we have expectations. We have expectations of how we want our life to be, how we
Mm.
want it to unfold. That's just human nature.
Yeah.
That's human nature. We want to look forward. Unfortunately, we have to grab the past and bring it up and analyze the present moment against our past. And again, like I said, we're focusing on the wrong thing, the thing that's not
Mm.
working,
Yeah.
right? And NLP is really about, as Dr. Richard Bandler said, being
Yes.
curious about what's possible. As Deepak Chopra said, the fear in life, which everything is fear of the unknown, is living on the edge of that known and the unknown. And the
Mm.
unknown is where all the possibilities lie.
Mm.
Everything lies in the unknown, but we don't want to go into the unknown because that's scary. That's fearful. That's hard because we have to be,
And
again, be vulnerable.
and on that point, like, yes, we should have expectations. It's like having a vision. Like, you want to
Yes. Yes.
know what you
Yes.
desire and want.
Yes.
But then there's the other side to that is what Tony Robbins says is that you should trade your expectations for gratitude. So try to find the best things in that person. Like, you're
Yes.
also saying,
Yes. Yes.
like if you focus on the negative all the time. So there's a sort of a dual sword, that one. Yeah. Like, you have to have
Yeah.
expectations, but
Of
also
course.
you have to appreciate them for who they are as well.
One of the things Tony says is he calls it standards, right? He calls them
Mm.
standards for yourself. And those are really expectations. What do I expect out of myself every day? To learn, to be a good human being, to love the people around me, to take care of myself. Those are standards. We tend to lower our standards for the people that come into our life. Look, again, raise your hand if you've ever been in a relationship that didn't work, or if you're one right now. Here's what happens. We get into a relationship with a certain energy of who we are, which are our values and our standards. If that energy is here,
Mm.
and we come into a relationship with someone else and their energy is here,
Mm.
they bring us down to their energy so we can communicate. It's always the negative energy that brings us down. It's very rare. I mean, I'm sure it happens that this person comes up. You're such at a higher frequency, a higher energy level. It can affect the people here, but they have to, as we talked about, be responsible for who they are and want it first, and have to have those
Have to
standards
want
to
it.
make
Mm.
it happen, or it's not going to happen. So
Mm.
until you find that vibrational energy, that value, that those standards, that those visions, as you were talking about, those goals, and harmoniously sync with them, the relationship can't work. It can't. So you need to know. That's why that list, that 50 characteristics, is important, because it really goes deep into who you are. And I've had people say, my God, it took me weeks to figure my top three. And as it should be,
Yeah.
because I could ask
It's
you or
important.
anyone else, right? Like, who are you? You're not going to
Yeah.
just, oh, I know who I am, and spout it off the top of your head. Sometimes it took me 10 years to figure it out. So, as you were saying before, be in gratitude of who and where you are right now in your life, and give yourself permission. Boy, that's a huge word for most people.
Mm-hmm.
Give yourself permission to make mistakes and to fall on your butt and to fail and love yourself in spite of all that.
Mm.
And we don't do that. We're so hard on ourselves. We really are. It's one of the things to answer the question is you've got to be in gratitude of yourself first. Well, you're
Yes.
never going to accept who or what circumstances come along. You can't. The strongest person, that knows themselves and values those standards and those emotions is going to be the one that's going to walk away most healthy. Because
Mm.
now they know I don't deserve that any longer. I deserve something better.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing to do, is to look at ourselves and I know from everyone that comes to me, and we talked about this before. If you're listening to this, understand this, folks. Every problem that we have, that I've dealt with, and I've dealt with a lot of them for 20 years with people coming to me, when we talked about this before, peeling away the onion, the layers of who we are, the core is our self-worth.
Mm.
What you think and believe, right? Our
Mm.
beliefs of what we deserve.
Mm-hmm.
If you
Yeah.
don't feel you deserve the best, and
Yeah.
you're in a bad, unhealthy relationship, and your self-esteem or self-worth is like, well, that's all I deserve, that's all I'm capable of, then that's all you're going to produce.
Yeah.
Whether it be relationships or, I can't afford that. I'll never make that kind of money. Or I'll
Mm.
never really be healthy. I'm sick. I'll never really be healthy. That's that internal voice, that core essence of who you are, your deserving belief system.
Mm.
And until you change the core of who you are, nothing around you will change. No matter, you leave the relationship, you bring yourself to the next one.
Yeah.
You leave the country, you leave the state to another place to live, a different environment, you bring that negative energy with you. Can I give them another exercise?
Yes, please.
Brian Tracy, the motivational speaker, taught me this probably 20 years ago. This one exercise changed me overnight. And I know it will for you. I'm going to teach
Right.
it to you right now. It takes 2 minutes to do, not even 2 minutes, it takes 1 minute to do. If the essence of who we are is our self-worth, and
Yes.
if you could build up your self-worth like this,
Mm.
would your life be better all
Yes.
around?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Of course. You couldn't refute that
No.
because your inner core has changed. And
Mm.
then the things along the way, those layers begin to change, and then your environment changes. So here's how we want to build up your self-worth. It's a simple technique I learned from Brian Tracy, and it's called I Like Myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's a simple affirmation. Intense emotions
Yes.
coupled with a powerful affirmation will change your beliefs.
Always.
Okay, folks? A powerful, intense emotion
Mm.
coupled with a powerful affirmation. They can't operate on a single plane of existence.
Yeah.
That energy has to be coupled with this energy for that to work, because it has to be believed down in your core.
Mm.
It has to transform that 90% of who you are. So here's the exercise. It's so ridiculously simple. You're going to say, I like myself 3 times with intensity. Here's how it
Mm.
goes. Now, some of you are going to go, that's stupid. I would never do that. Then don't. I don't care. Stay the way you are. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
You're not living my life and I'm not living yours. I'm just giving you something that works.
Mm.
But you got to practice it.
Mm.
You got to make it a daily habit for 21 to 90 days. It's not about them, it's about me. So here's how it goes. You say to yourself out loud with intensity, I like myself.
Not love.
No, because if you don't like yourself, you'll never love yourself.
Right.
You have to say it, and you've got to say it with gusto and belief and intensity, and say it all the time. And here's what I tell my students and my clients: say it when it's uncomfortable. in places where you never would do it. You're overcoming that comfort zone. You know, one of the things I think Wayne Dyer said is we live life on the outside of our comfort zone. The comfort zone is everything we've done in the past. That's great. But
Yeah.
if you want a new life, if you want something different, you got to step outside of your comfort zone. And to do this exercise where you're not comfortable, that's the key. You're going to stretch your boundaries of who you are and what you want to become when you do that. And I did that just for a month, and I could feel everything inside of me beginning to change. I
Mm,
knew then I started to deserve better.
mhm.
And therefore, I started to look in my environment for better opportunities. I know this all sounds hokey, but again, if we come back to how the brain works, folks,
Yeah.
the brain, it runs these programs, these recipes. And if you were born with that, now I know there's some people maybe listening going, God, I love myself. I like myself very much. That probably came from your parents, your primary caretakers. But most people didn't have that growing up. Most people said, oh, stop that. You're not good enough. You don't deserve that.
Yeah.
That negative internal dialogue that was downloaded onto your little hard drive came from your primary caretakers, which is usually your parents. They didn't mean to say that. They don't mean to. I mean, I remember my dad saying one day when I was 8 years old, "You're so damn lazy," and he spouted these words. But I heard that resonate my whole life.
Mm,
Just like all of you have these resonating internal dialogues that come from your primary caretakers. You know, we complement each other, right? You're in a healthy relationship. You complement each other.
mm.
You need that energy. You need that yin yang energy in your life. I'm going to get a little somber for a moment because
Okay.
I'm living what I'm talking about with you right now. I didn't think that I could do this interview.
Really?
36 hours ago. Oh, I'm going to cry. My Doberman of 13 years passed away in his sleep at my feet.
Oh, I'm
And
so sorry.
ugh, he would be right here with me,
Yeah.
probably barking at you.
Mm,
13 years every day of my life. And it was, and some of you understand this. Loss of a pet is like losing a child.
yeah. Yeah.
Everything reminds me of him. I come home and he's not jumping on me for
I
joy.
know. Yeah, I
I,
lost my
I,
dog last year. And it was
you drive away
very
from the house and
sad.
I see his face in the window and say goodbye to him.
Mm,
We have another dog. I literally didn't expect all this to happen. I'm feeding him and the other dog bowl is empty and I started to cry.
mm,
You know,
yeah.
I find a toy because under the bed. I just lose it. So I wanted to do this interview because I wanted to talk about managing your emotions
Yes.
because life is going to happen.
Mm,
You could be angry because a relationship failed. You could be angry because you lost all your money in a crisis or in COVID.
mm.
Or you can be honorable that you've had the privilege. I had the privilege of going through that with him for 13 years, and that's what keeps me going. That's
Yeah.
what I focus on. I don't focus on the pain of the
Mm,
loss. I do grieve whenever
yeah.
somebody calls me to tell me, oh my God, John, I'm so sorry. You know how important he was. I don't focus on the pain.
And to honor that emotion that you're experiencing, like you're experiencing sadness, and so you should honor that, like it's an
Absolutely.
important emotion, and anger is
Absolutely.
too. Anger
Oh,
is an important emotion.
somebody said this to me. My neighbor across the street has 4 dogs. One of them died last year. She came to knocked on the door at like midnight and bring me a bouquet of flowers and said, "Oh my God, John, I'm so sorry." She said to me, "We forget that everything in life, every bit of energy that we experience, has a negative side and a positive side." Right? We talked about this, the yin yang theory in life. There's no up without a down. There's no right without a left. There's no black without a white. There's no darkness without light. There's no
Mm,
love without sadness.
mm,
You can't experience that amazing feeling I had with him every day. You can't experience that high if
Yeah.
you can't expect that someday there's going to be a loss and there's a grief. You can't.
Yeah.
You're crazy if you think life is going to be up here all the time. Because here's what happens. If you think life is going to be like this every day, it's boring.
Yeah.
It's
Totally.
boring.
Mm,
I want to trade those highs for
mm.
those lows, because that joy in life that he brought me and my wife, you can't experience that anywhere else.
Yeah.
And here's one of the reasons I even came on the podcast today and didn't cancel, because I wanted to say to your listeners this: if you've had a pet and you've loved that pet, or you still have that pet and you love that pet, there is nothing more amazing than the love that that pet has for you, because it's completely unconditional.
So true.
And we give that, and when we give that back to that pet, wouldn't it be amazing if we could give that same experience and energy to a human being?
Mm.
Wouldn't
Yes,
it
I
be
said this
amazing?
recently.
Yes. If my wife walks in the door and I jump all over her like a little puppy and love
Yeah.
her like unconditionally,
Yeah.
and she would return that favor. Imagine having that kind of
It's
relationship with a human being.
it's almost like they've forgotten yesterday, isn't it?
This is
Yeah.
what it's all about. This is
Yeah.
exactly what you and I are talking about right now. I
Mm,
don't care what
mm,
you want in life, it's irrelevant. If
mm.
you can't find that joy in everything
Yeah,
that
the
you do
joy.
and that peace within you, that peace, nothing else matters.
And that's given you meaning in your
Oh,
life. And the reason why you're sad is because it is so
yeah,
meaningful.
of course, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
He was the biggest love bug in the world,
Yeah.
you know. And again, that's his high and low, right? That's his
Mm,
extreme, and then the other extreme was he was a pain in the butt. But the antithesis is that is he gave out so much love,
yeah.
as much as you should have for the people that you surround yourself with. I just challenge each one of you listening to this podcast that I have the pleasure that she brought me on and we connected, and I and her have the pleasure to give to you today, to live your life like that. Live your life in a new direction. Give yourself your self-worth and
Mm,
meaning and higher standards, and practice that exercise of I like myself, and live to a different degree. Because I don't care how old you are. I'm over 19 now.
so am I.
I don't know how many years I have left, but I'm not going to waste them
No.
on regret and guilt and blame and anger. So many people, so many of you, and I know some of you listening to this right now, place your attention units on things that don't work in your life. Energy, energy systems and experiences that aren't operating at full capacity. And then you blame that energy.
Mm,
But
mm.
we already know, as the earth, this planet is a magnetic field, because everything is, like attracts like. And if you, oh, this is the sad part, Anwyn. If you guys are attracting crap in your life that you don't like, it's because you're putting out that energy.
Yeah.
I'm challenging you right now to change your energy and change the love you have for yourself and the people around you. And God is my witness, watch the things around you and the circumstances around you change instantly, because now you're paying attention to something completely different.
Mm,
Not what's not working, but what is working.
mm.
That's the secret to life.
Yeah. And so what's that resource that you were mentioning?
If you go to my website, it's real easy. I'm in Los Angeles.
Mhm.
So my website is called LA, like Los Angeles, LANLP, 5 letters.com. LANLP.com/love, LOVE. There's a list of things that we just talked about. If you scroll down, talks about building relationships, and then I put 4 links in there for some
Oh,
of the things
okay.
that I want to talk about. The 50 characteristics worksheet, which is kind of like a values assessment of who you are and what you want in a relationship, and then the NLP deep love strategy, and then a confidence exercise called I Like Myself. Talking about not just why relationships fail, because I think that's important for people to understand that. And then we kind of reverse engineer it. Why do they fail? Because not because of the other person, but because our choosing of that person and how we value ourselves in that. And then how do we fix that problem, right? Because that's what NLP is all about, is really uncovering and modeling what successful strategies are. And deep love strategy is no different than a success strategy or a driving a car strategy or a money making strategy. They're all the same. So I think that'll be kind of interesting. We kind of touch a little bit on all of that. Also, a link for some of my books. And at the
Yep.
very bottom of the page, I'm doing this for your listeners. There's a free coaching session. If you guys want to talk to me for 30 minutes, go there, hit that button, fill out the little form about what it is, and send it off to me, and we'll have a great conversation. I would love to talk to you guys.
Beautiful. That's
Yeah, it is.
fantastic. Yeah. Well, thank you for today.
Oh, thank you.
It's been very enlightening.
Are an amazing woman. You're an amazing individual. Because
Thank you.
and we talked about this. I know how hard it is to do this. I know how hard it is to set these up, get the right people, get the right energy, edit it, put it out there to the world, whether it's working for you or not. You're putting your stuff out there because you're expecting to be vulnerable as well when you put this out to the universe, right? Whether people like it or not. Same thing that we do when we post stuff and we tell somebody something about ourselves, we become vulnerable. And this is just your platform of doing it. So I honor and respect what you do and acknowledge that for everybody that's ever heard you speak.
Thank you. And I really love doing it, and I love hearing people's stories. And so that's what drives me.
Yep.
And you know what? I actually don't think that anyone is going to have, think that it's a bad interview or anything like that. I don't have that vision. I just think someone will get something out of it. There'll
Absolutely.
be, something
Absolutely.
that they get out of it. Yeah.
We can't ever expect to put out our content and our information out there and expect 100%, acknowledgement of it. Somebody's not going to like it. And we don't do it for that. Like you just said, we do
No.
it for that one person or a
Yeah,
handful of people that we
exactly.
say something. Just, one of my friends says, when I read a book, I look for one golden nugget that changes my life. That's all I ask. If that one exercise, I like myself, changes everything about you and your entire life, we did our job here on this interview.
Yeah. 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 Very powerful.
Yes.